Ven Señor Jesús, Maranatha. Ven Señor Jesús, Maranatha. Ven Señor Jesús, Maranatha. Si ven pronto, Maranatha.
Okay. I am going to talk about a recent hero of mine. He is Bishop P. of Poitiers. He was active in the 1860s, 1870s. And he was very close to Pius X. Bishop P. saw naturalism as the chief heresy of the modern age and combated it vigorously. As Leo XIII described it in Humanum Genus, which I believe was an encyclical in the first half of the 19th century, naturalism is a doctrine stating that human nature and human reason ought in all things to be mistress and guide. Okay, now think about this. God himself, God who created everything that is, God who created mankind, God who created creation, God who created existence. God created existence, okay? That's pretty heavy stuff. God is in charge of our eternal life. God is in charge of what happens after we die. Everyone, every human being, not just Catholics. He's in charge of what happens after every human being dies. God has told us a bunch of stuff. God has told us a bunch of rules. God has revealed a tremendous amount of important truths. But naturalism says human nature and human reason ought in all things to be the mistress and guide. Now, if on the one hand you have the creator of everything that wants to tell you what to do, and on the other hand you have human reason, do you rely on human reason? Or do you rely on the guy who invented everything? Really, it doesn't make much sense. But naturalism says that we should rely only on human nature and human reason to be our guide. That's obviously reflected in secular government. Separation of church and state. If you're going to have the full separation of church and state, which by the way is not in the Constitution and was never anywhere in the Founding Fathers, they never wanted separation of church and state. In fact, I forgot which of the Founding Fathers said, when they came up with the Constitution and the government, the structure of the government, they said this will only work for religious people. You know, if the citizenry stops being religious, then, you know, the civilization will fall. The government, this entire system that we've set up will fail, which it has. Because basically, democracy only works if the democracy itself is under God, the people who are voting are under God, and the officials who are elected view themselves as under God. If everyone is doing everything out of self-interest, it's just not going to work, and it therefore has ceased working. Anyway, but so you see this tension here between naturalism and the reflection of basically revelation in the ordering of government and society. Okay, so Cardinal P defined naturalism as, get this independent and repulsive attitude of nature with regard to the supernatural and revealed order properly constitutes the heresy of naturalism. Okay, so this independent and repulsive attitude of nature with regard to the supernatural and revealed order, in other words, the supremacy of nature over the supernatural order, properly constitutes the heresy of naturalism. Human nature and natural reason, it cannot be superior to the supernatural and revealed order, since the supernatural and revealed order comes from the creator of everything. If you consider human reason and human nature superior over the revealed order, that is a repulsive attitude and the heresy of naturalism, according to Cardinal P. In short, Cardinal P called it, quote, anti-Christianity. Okay? That's what we have, by definition. If the government wants to pretend to be completely separate from any divine revelation, it's anti-Christianity. Continuing, Cardinal P insists, by neither allowing the incarnation of the natural Son of God nor the divine adoption of man to remain, it suppresses Christianity both at its top and at its bottom. It harms it in its source and in its branches. Okay, so the government is suppressing Christianity at the top by denying the divine incarnation of the Son of God, and at the bottom by denying the divine adoption of man. Comparing naturalism with ordinary heresy, he states, heresy denies one or several dogmas. Naturalism denies that there are dogmas and that there ever may be any. Heresy more or less alters divine revelations. Naturalism denies that God is revealer. Heresy dismisses God from such or such a portion of his kingdom. Naturalism eliminates him from the world and from creation. Okay? So heresy dismisses God from this piece of his kingdom or that piece of his kingdom, but naturalism eliminates him from the world and from creation. Concerning the kingship of Christ, P declares Jesus Christ is king not only of heaven, but further of earth, and it belongs to him to exercise a true and supreme kingship over human societies. This is an indisputable point of Christian doctrine. With St. Augustine, P notes that it is not enough just to believe that God exists. It is necessary for us to believe in God, which means recognizing the existence of the sovereign being. We have duties to fulfill towards him. Okay? So it's not just believing that God exists. We have to believe that since God exists, we have duties with respect to him. That being said, if we believe in God, we must subject our reason to his revelation, our will to his will, and our actions to his law. We have at least to offer to God this tribute of public religion, this act of national faith, which would be recognition of his empire and the proclamation of his supreme rights. Okay? Now, I'm going to skip to the end because I'm running long here. Now, the Pius X wrote a, I hope I get this right, because I'm skipping around, but I think it was Pius X who wrote the encyclical Quas Primas, which teaches on the social kingship of Christ, the fact that the kingship of Christ should be reflected in governments. Although the teaching on social kingship of Christ in Quas Primas has clearly been ignored by many in the Church since its promulgation, nevertheless it still retains its binding character. Never one to mince words, Cardinal P made it clear that the social kingship of Christ was not optional. Like the intrepid bishop that he was, he defied Napoleon III, who was the Emperor of France at the time. Addressing this latter-day potentate, Cardinal P declared, "If the time has not yet come for Christ to reign, oh well, then the time has not yet come for governments to last." There's another quote of Cardinal P that I want to add, which is, "Secularists wish to consign to oblivion any notion of the Christian state, Christian law, and of the Christian prince. What follows is no longer the sweet yoke of Christ, but absolute bondage. The imaginary theocracy of the Church," because if there's a theocracy of the Church, it's not a theocracy of the Church. It's a theocracy of God, who has the right to order human society. But anyway, as opposed to the imaginary theocracy of the Church, it would be replaced with a theocracy as absolute as it is illegitimate. That is, the theocracy of Caesar, as the head and arbiter of religion, supreme oracle of doctrine and law. Okay? So either you have a theocracy of the Church, which is a theocracy of God, who has that right, or you have a theocracy of secularism, a theocracy of Caesar, that then acts as the head and arbiter of religion, the supreme oracle of doctrine and law. Because what you have is you actually have the forces of Satan directing the course of human society. And therefore, you have now in the United States, states where if a parent refuses to allow their 10 or 12-year-old child to be mutilated, to pretend to be mutilated into being the opposite gender, then that child, the state has the right to take that child away from the parents in order to enable that child on the full sophistication and knowledge and maturity of being 10 years old to decide to be castrated. Right? Now, is that who's that a theocracy of? I mean, that's got to be a theocracy of Satan, right? What do you have now with the LGBTQ business, with the pride flag being flown at the White House above the US flag? So we see what happens. You're going to have a theocracy. The only question is it a theocracy of Caesar, or is it a theocracy of Christ? Is it a theocracy of God, or is it a theocracy of Satan? Continuing with Cardinal P. In fact, this is a renewed pagan theocracy, soon to be carried out in the reign of high priest people and of the God state through socialism. Politics without God has a name. In the gospel it is called the prince of this world, or the power of the beast, but today it is called separation of church and state. With that on that cheerful note, I will leave you for today.
Ven Señor Jesús, Maranatha. Ven Señor Jesús, Maranatha. Ven Señor Jesús, Maranatha. Si ven pronto, Maranatha.